Good afternoon, all, and welcome. It is simply fantastic to be here together again to celebrate Sarah and James Bowdoin Day with all of you and to celebrate our amazing students in person. For those that don't know, I'm Clayton Rose. I'm the president of the college. And I want to offer a few words about this moment and this event this afternoon. The accolades that we offer here today are not easily earned. Ours at Bowdoin is a rigorous academic program with standards of excellence that are challenging and with expectations set by our amazing faculty that are very difficult to meet. The outstanding level of achievement that's been demonstrated by our students requires intense focus, a deep pride in one's work and a passion for learning, and it warrants our full appreciation and the congratulations that we are offering to each of you today. Our recognition of Bowdoin scholars goes back to 1941. In those days, the students were all men, and this honor was then named exclusively for James Bowdoin III. In 1997, the college, by faculty vote and in a moment of great enlightenment, decided that it was appropriate to reestablish the tradition in the name of James and Sarah Bowdoin. And Sarah was an active partner with her husband in creating our college. The Honorable James Bowdoin III lived from 1752 until 1811, and he was the son of James Bowdoin II, for whom the college is named. James, too, was a political and intellectual leader during the Revolutionary War. He was later twice elected the governor of Massachusetts, a very successful entrepreneur and a member of the business and elite society of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, of which the District of Maine was then a part. He was also a man with a profound interest in learning, who, along with John Adams, John Hancock, and others, founded the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in Boston. And visitors to Boston can find Governor Bowdoin's grave in the Granary Burying Ground on Tremont Street, near where Hancock and Samuel Adams are also buried. And it was Adams, who was governor, signed the charter that established Bowdoin College in 1794. Governor Bowdoin's son, James III, was one of our country's first connoisseurs of American and European culture and politics, a diplomat, agriculturalist, and a collector who acquired a substantial library, significant and magnificent art collection, and an impressive array of scientific materials, of which we at the college are the inheritors. And he also provided land and the funds to help establish this first college in Maine. Sarah Bowdoin traveled to London and Paris from 1805 to 1808 with her husband James III when they served President Thomas Jefferson, living in Paris as the ambassador to Spain. The Bowdoins, that's another story for another day. The Bowdoins operated out of Paris. Sarah kept a journal, which today can be found in our special collections area here at Bowdoin, which documented the daily life of the family. And it appears that they flourished in Europe, entertaining Americans living in Paris and friends of America in Europe. Sarah's journal activities indicate that she was very much involved in the collecting activities of the couple, and we therefore owe her a deep debt of gratitude for the treasures that we have inherited at the college. Today we remember the Bowdoin family through this annual event and with two other traditions. The Gilbert Stuart portraits of James and Sarah Bowdoin that hang in our Museum of Art are decorated today with a laurel garland. And on this day, those with a discerning eye will notice that we've replaced our large American flag on the quad with a smaller flag that flew over the U.S. Capitol on August 7, 1963, to commemorate the birth of Massachusetts Governor James Bowdoin II. Thank you for joining us here today to remember Bowdoin's history and especially to congratulate our amazing students on their remarkable accomplishments. Now, it is my great pleasure to begin the event this afternoon by introducing this year's Sarah and James Bowdoin Day speaker, Julia Jennings, from the class of 2023. A theater and gender, sexuality, and women's studies double major and an English minor, Julia grew up in Hatboro, Pennsylvania, and she is no stranger to this stage. She has fully engaged herself in all aspects of theater, including working on the leadership team to write, produce, and direct Rise, the Untold Stories of Bowdoin Women, and serving as vice president and now artistic director of the Mask and Gown, for which she has also directed and acted. Julia has been a leader of the Bowdoin Women's Association and worked as a writer and an editor for the Bowdoin Orient. This past summer, she had an internship at the theater at Monmouth here in Maine, where she stage managed one play and assistant stage managed 3 others. Julia says it was an incredibly intense experience that allowed her to live and work and learn from professional theater artists already fully immersed in their craft. She is currently working on an original play for her theater studio capstone class and was telling me outside that she's considering playwriting as a career alternative. She says the project is a reflection on the pandemic and the ways in which we have enacted humanity in the face of COVID-19's many challenges. Following that, Julia hopes to study away this spring at the National Theater Institute at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center in Waterford, Connecticut, for an immersive theater semester in which she plans to study acting, directing, playwriting, and design with theater professionals in a 10-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week intensive program. Really? In her talk this afternoon, Julia shares with us the student experience of how identities developed and shift during these 4 years at Bowdoin, and the importance of finding what makes us come alive. Please join me in welcoming Julia Jennings.
Good afternoon, everyone. Congratulations to you all. It is an honor to be standing with you today, just as it has been an honor to work alongside of you and to get to know you as scholars, thinkers, and creators. I want to begin by sharing a reflection that keeps crossing my mind. Nearly every day during our time at Bowdoin, we cross the quad on the same paths, over and over and over again. As I have walked recently, I have felt that though the paths remain unchanged, the world that we have come to navigate here has grown radically different. It has been disorienting in many ways to return to this old familiar place in a time of such complete novelty and uncertainty. How do we learn to occupy old spaces with new selves? During our time at Bowdoin, we live so many lives already, our individual pathways colliding and connecting and collaborating as we discover who we are and who we are becoming in the world. We take different classes and make different friends and try on different hats. This has just been heightened by the pandemic, as we have been forced to examine ourselves and our work as scholars and young adults in several new and ever-changing contexts. Our paths have suddenly and unexpectedly spread beyond Bowdoin, as we have gone home, gone out into the workforce, and gone on to face new challenges on a global scale. We are now more than ever tuned in to the wider world. The Bowdoin bubble has, in many ways, burst. As I have walked the paths of Bowdoin lately, I have considered this, and I was struck with the image of 4 versions of myself walking down the path, one Julia from each year of my time here. Myself and myself and myself and myself. What would we talk about? What would I say to my first-year self? What could I learn from the person that I will be when I am through with my time at Bowdoin? I see us walking together, each of us experiencing her own heartbreak, victories, and challenges in the context of those 4 years. In my fiction workshop class this fall, Professor Zahir Mohammed brought this into perspective, describing this phenomenon as the first-person plural, a radical we. What happens if we see ourselves as part of a collective? If we acknowledge not only the multiplicity of identities and passions that exist within us, but also the manner in which we as individuals connect with the greater story of our time. We have all lived a very different pandemic experience, yet across the board there has of course been great loss. There were games we never played, plays we never performed, and beloved seniors that we never got to say goodbye to. We lost our immediate sense of community, one of the most prominent features of the Bowdoin experience. And what followed for the world, including many of the Bowdoin community, was even more grim. Loss of life, economic stability, and the world as we knew it. How do we grapple with loss and move forward toward a radical place of growth? Even now, we see the world around us struggling to define itself, to rebuild and to learn from what has been lost. Needless to say, the pandemic has provided a unique opportunity for reflection. Here at Bowdoin, an institution that, in many ways, has remained remarkably unchanged for decades, we have been presented with the opportunity to take a step back and examine more deeply what is actually at the root of what we do. What is essential about our work? What needs to remain at the forefront? And what is it time to change? As an institution, how do we realign our work with our values? As Bowdoin students, how do we take this deeply unexpected and unique set of experiences and embrace them as a chance for growth? When I arrived at Bowdoin as a first year, I admittedly took on far more than I could handle. I worked stage management for multiple plays, I joined the Mask and Gown Board, the RISE leadership team, I worked with leadership for Bowdoin Women's Association and the editors of The Orient. I even tried to play I Am Badminton. I felt that I had to do it all in order to be successful. I burnt out quickly. When the pandemic hit and all of these activities were taken away, I was crushed. And yet slowly, I found an unexpected reinvigoration developing in my coursework. I desperately missed the adrenaline and intimacy of in-person classes, but I found that I miraculously had more time to engage in the classes that interested me the most. I now had empty hours before me, which I first painfully and then with greater joy began to fill with work from my classes. Now I had time to dig into Aristotle's Poetics, the cinematography of The Farewell, and yes, even the screenwriting of Michael Clayton, and there I was surprised to find great joy and room for comprehension. The pandemic certainly brought on significant academic and life challenges, complicating our paths as scholars, but it also presented many of us with time for reflection. I discovered a sort of enlightenment in pursuing what felt like my calling, the work that felt deeply connected to my evolving sense of self. I am excited to be part of an academic community that prizes this kind of intellectual curiosity and fervor. I am inspired by this vision of academic excellence and the life of the mind being not only reflected in the achievement of grades, but even more so in the passion and enthusiasm of trusting ourselves as scholars to seek out the work that makes us feel most alive. Now, back on campus again, I find myself similarly swayed by the temptation to do it all. But I am still fiercely clinging to that passionate, curious intellectualism that I felt during the early days of the pandemic. I commend this desire within myself and within us as Bowdoin students to follow all of our passions and to take on innumerable responsibilities. But I also believe that we need to recognize that we can only do our greatest work if we make room to prioritize what feeds our minds as thinkers and creators. Earlier this month, I was sitting in Gelato Fiasco working on a reading for my fiction class when I received a text out of the blue from a friend. It was one of the best things that I have ever read. A quote from the esteemed dancer and choreographer Martha Graham said to Agnes DeMille on opening night of the musical Oklahoma in 1943. Martha said, "There is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action, and because there is only one of you in all of time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium, and it will be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, nor how valuable it is, nor how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours, clearly and directly, to keep the channel open." Agnes responded to her, pointing out that often within our work we see only the flaws. Is there then no satisfaction in the work that we do? Martha replied passionately, "No satisfaction whatever at any time. There is only a queer divine dissatisfaction, a blessed unrest that keeps us marching and makes us more alive than the others." That, my friends, is the core of what I wish to reflect on with you today. This queer divine dissatisfaction that keeps us marching on the path. I understand that this is far easier said than done, the idea of pursuing our calling or the work that inspires us. And yes, the freedom to follow this channel necessitates a certain amount of privilege. However, I believe that it is necessary to seek out this channel where we can in our academic and intellectual pursuits. Only then will we truly be able to do our most effective work, to be most alive in our minds. So, when I think back to the path and walking with myself and myself and myself and myself, and I think of what I would say to a younger self just arriving at Bowdoin, I think of this Martha Graham quote, and I think of this passionate life of the mind that I hope many of us are now experiencing greater freedom to pursue. So again, I want to congratulate all of you on your achievements and your passions, and I encourage all of us to continue to discover and to delve into this blessed unrest that keeps us alive in our academic and intellectual pursuits. Thank you.
So in a few years, when Julia is collecting her Oscar, her Emmy, and her Tony, you will all have been here and you will remember that. Don't forget us when all that happens, okay? Sorry, looking for my place here. All right. Now, we begin this afternoon's recognition of our scholars with the presentation of the Allman Goodwin Prize, and I invite our recipients to come to the stage. Should be 4 of you. The Allman Goodwin Prize was established in 1906 by Mrs. Maud Wilder Goodwin in memory of her husband, Almond Goodwin, the class of 1862. The prize is commonly given to just one exemplary member of Phi Beta Kappa, but this year the award goes to 4 impressive Bowdoin seniors, and it is my pleasure to tell you a little bit about each of them. Anthea Bell hails from Boxborough, Massachusetts, a biology major, visual arts minor. Among her endeavors at Bowdoin, she's worked as a chemistry teaching assistant, volunteered at the Brunswick Bath Area Respite Care, where she spends time with seniors experiencing mid-stage Alzheimer's. Her current honors project explores how the cricket central nervous system heals. And one of her most memorable experiences was when everyone in her neurobiology lab decided to work together on the final project and organized a cricket coliseum, where they investigated if the presence of female crickets affect male aggression during cricket fights. And the answer to that is they do or they don't. Thank you, Thea. Emily Pan, double majoring in chemistry and Hispanic studies. A Houston native, Emily's been very involved in the McKean Center, volunteering as a leader for Bear Buddies, a first-year orientation leader, a community course liaison with Professor Boyle for the Multilingual Mainers program, a public health club leader, and co-leading an alternative spring break trip to Florida this year to learn about migrant farm worker rights. Emily also works as a chemistry TA and is pursuing a chemistry honors project as a Beckman Scholar with Professor Beth Stemler. Emily says that in addition to her chemistry research, studying Spanish has been one of her most rewarding experiences at Bowdoin. Learning about the language and cultures of the diverse Spanish-speaking world has helped cultivate her passion for exploration, discovery, intellectual challenge, and forming meaningful cross-cultural connections. Julia Pirillo comes to Bowdoin from Weston, Florida, double majoring in Romance languages and literatures and anthropology. Julia is currently working on an honors project researching the linguistic experiences of post-war Italian immigrants in Argentina, and says she's inspired by her grandfather and other family members who left Italy in search of better opportunities following World War II. She's president of the Bowdoin Film Society, a member of the Latin American Students Association and the Italian and French clubs, and currently works as an Italian learning assistant to help students in elementary Italian practice and appreciate the language. She's volunteered at the Harriet Beecher Stowe Elementary School to help third graders learn math, and with the Immigrant Legal Advocacy Project here in Maine as a translator. Julia says her time at Bowdoin has taught her that creativity is a powerful asset in the application of knowledge and in doing meaningful work. And Anthony Anez is a neuroscience major from Kennewick, Washington. Anthony's honed his passion for research into some very big and very small opportunities at Bowdoin. For example, he's working on an honors project that requires him to operate on the cardiac ganglion of crustaceans using the, quote, tiniest scissors you've ever seen. A Goldwater scholar, a quantitative reasoning tutor, Anthony finds meaning in pushing through tough problems, designing and redesigning experiments, and helping his peers adjust to the academic rigor of the college. Anthony says that for all experiments to work, quote, the stars must align, and the same can be said for his time here at Bowdoin. He describes his own transition to college and the subsequent culture shock as overwhelming, but he's found balance and community in his first-year floor mates, through his work in dining services, and has a deep connection to his faculty mentors, and naturally in an immersive classics course on Socrates. And the lesson that Anthony took from that course and from Bowdoin: to live a good life, one must live a well-examined life. Please join me in congratulating all four of these tremendously talented those in my age cohort always say we would never get into Bowdoin. I'm not sure we could survive a couple of days at Bowdoin, but bravo. This fall, 12 students have been elected to Phi Beta Kappa, all of whom are members of the class of 2022. Phi Beta Kappa Society, a national honorary society for the recognition and promotion of scholarship, was founded in 1776 at the College of William and Mary. The Bowdoin chapter, established in 1825, was the sixth in order of establishment. Election is based primarily on scholarly achievement, but consideration is given to a student's entire college record. And students elected to Phi Beta Kappa are expected to be persons of integrity and good moral character. If the students elected to Phi Beta Kappa would please stand as I read your names and remain standing until I have read all the names, and I will ask the audience to hold your applause until all of the scholars have been recognized. Anthea Bell, Michael Dean, Matthew Donnelly, Morgan Edwards, Braden Fisher, John Hood, Cuban Kim, Emily Pan, Julia Pirillo, Carolyn Poole, Shane Slemensky, and Anthony Anez. Congratulations to all of you. I now invite to the stage my colleague, Dean Jennifer Scanlon.
Good afternoon. A book bearing a replica of the early college bookplate that distinguishes the James Bowdoin collection in the library is presented to every undergraduate who has carried a full course program and has received a grade point average of 4.0 in their courses during the last academic year. This year, first-year recipients will receive the book David Driscoll, Icons of Nature and History by Julie McGee et al., Julie McGee, class of '82. Second-year recipients will receive Take Me to the River by Bowdoin's own professor of art, Michael Colster. Third-year recipients will receive Mississippi, An American Journey by Bowdoin's senior writer in residence, Anthony Walton. I will read the names and students will come up. From the class of 2020, Jason Park. From the class of 2022, Anthea Bell. Patrick Blonias. Warsame Bilhon. Summer Chamberlain. Brianna Cunliffe. Michael Dean. Matthew Donnelly. Morgan Edwards. Kieran and Zian. Katie Filikova in absentia. Braden Fisher. Reed Fail. Max Freeman. Prithvi Gunturu. Will Hausman. Elise Hawking. John Hood. Jeremy Hoyne Grosvenor. Kyle Jadis. Margaret Janes. Reuben Jones. Jacob Cassama. Cuban Kim. Isabel Crow. Grace Lee. Joanna Lynn. Michelle Luan. Fong Luong in absentia. Melissa McGrath. Kate McKee. Adrian Miller in absentia. Grace Monahan. Maximilian Muradian. Nicole Nigro. Emily Pan. Patricia Pecala. Evan Phillips. Caroline Poole. Kyle Putnam. Graham Rutledge. Tegan Ryan. Ruben Schaefer. Hannah Scotch. Shane Smolensky. Elena Sparrow in absentia. Catherine Walsh. Lauren Waters. Luke Weitzenberg. Michael Wilson in absentia. Rose Shi. Yifei Shu in absentia. Anthony Yanez. Nicole Yip in absentia. Jing Yi Zhou. From the class of 2023, Arav Agarwal in absentia. Lily Armstrong. Catherine Barrett. Emma Bohmfeam. Selena Chin. Sarah Clark. Jean Clement in absentia. Rory Devlin. Shayla Eubanks in absentia. Margaret Frederick in absentia. Seamus Frey in absentia. Ted Fuel. Francesca Garces. Ari Geisler. Anna Gunther in absentia. Oh, nope, not in absentia. Emma Hargraves in absentia. Julia Jennings. Zubin Kenkri in absentia. Ryan Kavarovics. Sinclair Liddell. Tony Liu. Elizabeth Matsiko. Leaf Maynard. Angela McKenzie. Liam McNett. Annika Moore. Ni Nguyen in absentia. Lucy O'Sullivan. Alexander Papanikolaou. Isabel Petropoulos. Lucas Porter. Patrick Rockford. Elijah Rowland. Edwin Sanchez Huiza in absentia. Corey Schmolka. Jillian Schur. Pranay Singh. Jacob Sternberg Schur. Ryan Supple. Clotine Tarleton. Sujata Tawari. Abby Wong. Jack Welschlager. Paris Wilson. Ian Zog. And from the class of 2024, Ahmad Abdulwadud in absentia. Sophia Adami Sampson. Jenna Albanese. Ingrid Astley. Seb Becker in absentia. Devin Bellevue in absentia. Annika Carey. Sarah Conant in absentia. Spencer Davis in absentia. Catherine Drager. Darian Gillespie. Shoshana Gordon in absentia. Ava Granfield. Nina Hashimoto. Ezra Jones. Jessica Kwasny in absentia. Zachary Leibowitz. Liliana Lines. Isabel Lockhart. Sam McClelland. Charles McLarnon in absentia. Adi Paul Parikh. Alexander Rakape. Ray Sakamoto in absentia. Oh, not in absentia. Emily Simons. Megan Stretch. Josephine Tidmore. Nancy Zing. And if we could extend a nice round of applause to all of our book winners.
It's a well-oiled machine here. Simply fantastic. Those are heavy books too, so good luck with that. Sarah and James Bowdoin Scholars are recognized each year in the fall on the basis of work completed in the previous academic year. And the award is given to the 20% of all eligible students with the highest grade point average. This year we have 320 Sarah and James Bowdoin Scholars. I'd like to ask all the scholars who are here today to stand so that once you're up, we can congratulate you and applaud you for your tremendous work. So please stand, our Sarah and James Bowdoin Scholars. And I now invite Dean Jennifer Scanlon back to the podium to introduce this afternoon's faculty keynote speaker.
It is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Michael Danahy, Senior Lecturer in Chemistry, who was selected to deliver today's keynote address. This fall's Kurofsky Faculty Encore Lecture, the second time Mike has received this speaking honor. The Kurofsky Family Fund was established by Paul I. Kurofsky, class of '66, his brother Peter Kurofsky, class of '62, and Paul's son David M. Zarofsky, class of '93, in memory of their father and David's grandfather, Sidney B. Kurofsky. The fund, which has underwritten the Sidney B. Kurofsky Prize for Junior Faculty, which Mike also won in 2012, added the Kurofsky Lectures in the spring of 2000. Mike manages to make the traditionally intimidating organic and inorganic chemistry courses inspiring and fun. He also teaches introductory courses and a favorite non-major class on poisons and toxins. In his classroom, he shows students the many connections between chemistry and different aspects of their lives and the world around them. Mike is known for his saying, "It's not just atoms and molecules, it's stories." Outside of Bowdoin, Mike has been a mentor for the American Chemical Society's International Chemistry Olympiad, and he's currently an American Chemical Society science coach for a local high school. Opening the world of science to young people is one of Mike's specialties. He has run the critically important Bowdoin Science Experience for nearly a decade. This is a mentorship program and orientation to college-level math and science designed for selected first-year students who belong to groups historically excluded from STEM. Over the years, the BSE, or Bowdoin Science Experience, has provided the foundation for many successful student careers in STEM at Bowdoin and beyond. Today, Mike will give the talk he calls Enjoy the Entropy. Please join me in welcoming Mike Danahy.
Thank you, Dean Scanlon, for that very nice introduction, and congratulations to all the students on your many achievements. When I was first approached to give this address, I thought it was a great honor to be here before you, but what was I going to talk about? So I asked around, and I was told to, quote, talk about a topic of my choosing, but with a tie-in to the importance of a liberal arts education. Now, that sounded a bit vague. So I, not being a particularly creative person, looked up the talks that were given at previous Sarah and James Bowdoin days for inspiration. And wouldn't you know it, I found out that many of them were research talks. Very interesting talks about biological, historical, or sociological research. But where did that leave me? I'm a lecturer. I don't have a research lab. I earn my keep as a classroom teacher. So I decided, well, screw it, I'll just teach them some chemistry. But not chemistry for chemistry's sake, but because I believe that chemistry is a prime example of the liberal arts. A liberal arts education, of which I'm a product, albeit from the other school that begins with B up the street, is all about intersectionality, exposure to various fields and seeing the connections between them. Chemistry, of all the sciences, is connected intimately to the others and is sometimes called the central science. As I tell my students, chemistry speaks neither too broad nor too specifically, and is able to communicate with the other sciences. Another reason why I like to teach chemistry is because of the stories of discovery. They reveal not only the science, but the people that are influenced by and influence the field. So the story I want to tell you today is about one of the laws of thermodynamics, the laws that drive the universe. Now, there's 4 of them, but I want to talk about one, in my opinion, the best one, the second law. Now, being a law of the universe, it's intimately connected to all the other sciences and everything else in existence, as we're all living in the universe. Now, the second law has umpteen ways to be stated, but one version states that the entropy of the universe is always increasing. That's a lot. So you might have some questions. Well, your first question may be, what is entropy? Well, entropy is thought of as randomness, disorder. For example, a messy room has more disorder, more randomness, more entropy than a clean one. A scattered deck of cards has more entropy than a deck that's in order. So, okay, that's entropy. Your second question may be, why is entropy increasing? Why is the universe becoming a more disordered place, a more random place? And I'm sorry to tell you, I don't know. It's just a law of the universe. And that's a funny thing about the laws of science. They just codify what's observable. They don't go into the why of it all. The great physicist Richard Feynman was giving a talk once about quantum mechanics, which is full of weird ideas to try to wrap your head around. And when he was asked why quantum mechanics was like that, he said, quote, well, it's just the way it works. You don't like it? Go somewhere else. To another universe where the rules are more philosophically pleasing and more psychologically easy. I can't help it, just the way it works. So increasing entropy is just the way it works. All we know is that the universe is becoming a more disordered, a more random place, with billions of years ago, the universe starting as a very dense and ordered place. And then bang, the universe started expanding, getting more disordered, spreading out and following its own law. Now, I believe that the second law of thermodynamics, this idea that entropy of the universe is always increasing, is not just for the world of science, not just things for like universe expansion or molecules or chemical reactions. It has implications for us, for humans. We as humans should follow the second law. We need to be open to the randomness, disorder, and serendipity of discovery. Not everything can be planned or ordered, and from time to time, things can and will happen in an unplanned way. Some of the greatest discoveries in chemistry, in science, and in many fields happen when someone had a random result or a random thought. Now, it was mentioned that I teach organic chemistry, the dreaded organic chemistry. And you know, when you're on a plane and you want to make small talk, you ask the person next to you, what do? I say I teach organic chemistry, and I wait for it. And they say, I hated organic chemistry. Or they say, organic chemistry, isn't that the one that no one likes? But I love it. I love teaching organic chemistry because of the chemistry and the stories. Now, the field has its beginnings in the 19th century when a British chemist named William Perkin, he was trying to synthesize the molecule quinine. Quinine was and still is an effective treatment for malaria. It's also found in tonic water. And with the British Empire pushing into tropical locales where malaria was prevalent, having a cheap way of mass producing this molecule instead of the expensive method of isolating it from the bark of trees would be useful. So Perkin plans a synthesis, mixes his chemicals, and gets nothing but black tar in his glassware. He failed. But when he washes his flasks, a beautiful purple color emerges. Perkin had just accidentally discovered in an unplanned and random way the first artificial dye called mauvine. The discovery of mauvine inaugurated the chemical dye industry and organic chemistry as a field. Chemists started tweaking molecules to get different spectacular colors, and synthetic chemistry began. The field really took off in Germany when Friedrich Bayer started his own dye company in 1863, and Friedrich Engelhorn his own in 1865. He started the Baden, aniline, and soda factory. Today, we know these companies as the Bayer Corporation, maker of a wide range of pharmaceuticals, and BASF, one of the largest chemical companies in the world. Perkin's random discovery was a spark that gave us the chemical world we live in today, and science is full of these discoveries. Microbiologist Alexander Fleming decided not to close the windows in his lab before he went off on vacation. He came back to find that some of his petri dishes that he inoculated with bacteria became contaminated with a fungus that had blown in. The fungus was pumping out a chemical that was killing the bacteria, and Fleming had just discovered penicillin, changing the world of antibiotics. In 1867, the astronomer Jocelyn Bell was investigating data coming in from her radio telescope. She discovered a regular signal coming from the same piece of sky. Now, of course, her advisor brushed this off as some sort of human phenomenon, but she decided to point her telescope to a different piece of sky and see what's going on over there. And she noticed the same random signal. Bell had just discovered pulsars, rotating neutron stars that release a regular pulse of radio waves. Pulsars have been used in navigating deep space and even detecting gravitational waves. So where does that leave us? Well, the second law of thermodynamics tells us that we should be open to the randomness of discovery and knowledge. Not necessarily the discovery of dyes or penicillin or pulsars, but the discovery of new people, new intellectual interests, and new ways of thinking. Now, embracing randomness and disorder can be off-putting. We as humans like predictability. But as the current Apple CEO said once, quote, innovation isn't a planned activity. It's bumping into each other over the course of a day and advancing an idea you just had. Now, over the past 18 months, COVID restrictions, however necessary, have made random or chance interactions a rare event. But as COVID restrictions inevitably ease, let us renew our openness to disorder. After all, randomness is part of discovery and a law of the universe. Now, for a second point on the second law, I had said before that the second law can be stated in many ways. They all essentially boil down to that the entropy of the universe is always increasing. But the definition of entropy can change. Now, that's weird, but hear me out. Entropy, the idea that of randomness or disorder, can be expressed as a quality of heat. Now, what do I mean by quality of heat? Either something is hot or something is cold, right? Well, by quality, I mean, what does that heat do when it heats up something else? Say I give some heat to an already hot thing. It turns out that that added heat doesn't do much to it. The thing's already hot. We might call that low quality heat. But now say I gave the same amount of heat to a cold item. It turns out that that added heat does a great deal to the cold thing. The thing was cold and now it's hotter. We call that high quality heat. Another way to think about it is that imagine you're standing by a campfire. On a cold day, the campfire will warm you up and you'll feel toasty, high quality heat. Now imagine you're standing by the same campfire on a hot day. You're already hot, so the added heat doesn't really change you all that much, low quality heat. We have a mathematical way of expressing this in terms of entropy changes. Entropy given the symbol of S. So delta S, the change in entropy, is equal to Q, which is heat, over T, the temperature at which that heat is given. So by the math, if T is large, a hot thing, the added heat makes the entropy change small. Adding heat to a hot thing is low quality heat. But according to the same equation, if T is small, a cold item, adding heat makes the entropy change large. Adding heat to a cold thing is high quality heat. Now you're all asking, where is he going with this? Well, let's get back to the second law. The second law says that the entropy of the universe is always increasing. The quality of heat is always increasing. And what this boils down to is describing how heat flows. The second law means that heat always flows from something that's hot to something that's cold. Heat has a higher quality when it heats up cold things. And we see this all the time in Maine. You open up your window on a cold day. The heat will flow out of your nice toasty room and into the cold outside. That's how we get high quality heat. Heat flows from hot things to cold things, gaining quality according to the second law. Now you might ask yourself, Danahy, you told me before that entropy was randomness or disorder, and it's always increasing. Okay. Now you're telling me that entropy is about heat flow, and heat flows from hot things to cold things? How are these ideas related? Well, to connect these ideas, let's think small for a minute, and I mean really small, molecules. When something's cold, like ice, the molecules are all bunched up, and they're all close together, not moving all that much. Some might say that they're highly ordered. But as you heat up the ice cube and it melts, the molecules move. They start dancing around. They get more random, more disordered. The moral of the story is that as the heat flows from hot things to cold things, the disorder of the molecules and atoms increase. So entropy, no matter how you slice it, increases. Things get more random as you heat them up. Now, there are lessons for this different way about thinking about the second law, that heat is always spreading out, interacting with cold matter, making their molecules dance a bit more. The lesson is that we should be spreading out, sharing the heat of our knowledge, warming others, and making the molecules of their brains dance a little bit more. And that's actually what happened this afternoon at the research symposium on the quad earlier today. The heat of knowledge from the student researchers spread out to others in attendance, following the second law of thermodynamics. Now, there's this antiquated view of research, especially scientific research, that it's done by some lone scientist working in a lab, coming up with discoveries and changing the world. But I think that all of us know that research and learning is not a solitary endeavor. It takes a group. Take the development of the COVID-19 vaccine. In a paper published in May by the journal Nature, the authors chronicled the major milestones in the vaccine's discovery. Now, in the paper, words like team and colleagues were constantly used. Science, research, knowledge is a team sport. There's a great quote by Yeats about learning. He says, quote, "Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire." You're at Bowdoin not to have your heads filled with facts in a solitary endeavor to become educated. You're here to have your academic fire lit, perhaps by your professors, your lab instructors, your advisors, or fellow students. And more importantly, your fire should spread its heat out, lighting fires in others. Much like you can't contain heat, it always spreads out even with the best of insulation. you can't contain knowledge. It always spreads out. Now, for my last point about entropy, let's investigate how we get the largest entropy change for the universe. Remember, the second law says that the entropy of the universe is always increasing. But before we delve into this, we need to think what we mean by when we say the word universe. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You're thinking, Danahy, the universe is everything. And you're right. But to a chemist, the universe is made up of only two things: the system and the system, which is the thing that you're interested in. It could be a chemical reaction, a group of people, a group of bees, doesn't matter. And the other part of the universe is the surroundings, which is everything else in the universe. So you can see who's doing most of the lifting in this relationship right here. So we can say that the entropy change of the universe is just the entropy change of the system and the entropy change of the surroundings. Now, I won't go into the derivation right now. I had a slide about it, but I took it out. You can always grab me afterwards and we can talk about it. But suffice it to say is that we get the largest entropy change of the universe when there's a huge temperature difference between the system and the surroundings. In fact, the larger you make the temperature difference, the bigger your entropy change for the universe becomes. In our normal lives, we see this when we open the window on a cold day. The heat rushes out of the warm room and into the cold air. If you do the same thing in July, nothing happens. The heat doesn't move at all because there isn't a temperature difference. Think about a cold front coming through a region on a hot day in the summer. The air starts moving, the wind starts blowing, maybe even a thunderstorm starts. Entropy really gets going when there are huge temperature differences. Now, that's all well and good for heat movement on cold days in Maine. But what's the moral of the story for us? And why am I bringing it up at a venue like this? Well, the take-home message is that we're following the law, the second law of the universe, when we encounter differences. And that's the liberal arts. You are literally required to take courses in different departments, exposing you to new students and new scholarship and new ways of thinking that may challenge your beliefs. Things happen in nature when we have differences in temperature. Things happen in the intellectual realm when there are differences in thought. And we should embrace difference and differences between us as thinkers. Take any great thinker, or anyone who has changed the way that we look at the world. It could be a chemist, a physicist, an economist, even a politician. What do they all have in common? They thought differently. Now, when I was in college a billion years ago, Apple had an ad campaign that said, "Think different." And it showcased people across disciplines who thought differently and changed things. And Apple was right. Great people think differently. They don't go along with a well-tread path, with what the establishment said. They are different, and they're not afraid to be different and move others to a new place. Now, another attribute about great thinking that goes along with the second law is that great thinkers aren't afraid to encounter and engage with those who think differently from them, and perhaps in opposition to them. Turning away from chemistry, there's a popular history book that some of you might have read about the Abraham Lincoln administration called Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns Goodwin. In it, she recounts how a president who thought differently, Abraham Lincoln, put in his cabinet the very people who ran against him for the Republican nomination and who thought differently from him. William Seward was the very popular senator from New York and the frontrunner for the nomination. He becomes Secretary of State. Salmon Chase, the governor of Ohio, who was from the radical wing of the party, he becomes the Secretary of Treasury. Edward Bates, the Attorney General of Missouri from the more conservative side of the party, becomes the Attorney General. Why did Lincoln do this? Why surround yourselves with those who wanted your job and don't think like you? Because Lincoln was cool with thinking differently. He didn't need sycophants or an echo chamber. He needed good advice and good people to run a good government. He said, quote, "I had looked the party out over and concluded that these people were the strongest," close quote. The very people who wanted his job and taken in a different direction, Lincoln thought they were the strongest. Putting your adversaries in your own administration, that is thinking differently. So as you progress through your remaining years or semesters at Bowdoin, or even if you're not a student here at Bowdoin, I urge you to follow the second law in your lives and enjoy the increase in entropy. Do something random in your time here. Take a class you thought you'd never take. Grab a coffee with a perfect stranger, even a faculty member or a staff member. Go ahead and spread out at your time at Bowdoin. Meet new people. Connect with your faculty. Go out into Brunswick in our great state of Maine. And most importantly, think differently. And be okay with those who think differently from you. Seek out and enjoy the company of those who have a different take on the world or a different perspective. Remember, increasing entropy isn't just good advice, it's a law of the universe. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mike. And I just have to say, where were you when I was trying to take organic chemistry? So, wow. I want to offer a final congratulations to all of the Phi Beta Kappa members, book award recipients, and our Sarah and James Bowdoin scholars on their outstanding accomplishments. And of course, our sincere thanks to Professor Danahy, to Julia, bravo, thank you, and to George Lopez. George, thank you. I'd now like to invite George to play us out with a recessional that will begin with our alma mater, Ray Songs to Bowdoin, which we will not be singing today with our continued focus on safety in the pandemic. I would ask you all to please stand if you are able and remain at your seat until the recessional march has left the theater. Thank you all for being here today.